I recognized her handwriting before I recognized my own name. That is the first thing I want to tell you. Not that a letter arrived. Letters arrive, even at 95, even when most of the people who might write to you have run out of time to do it. Letters are ordinary. What was not ordinary was standing at my front door on a Tuesday morning in November with an envelope in my hands and feeling my heart do something it had not done in 60 years. Something I had genuinely believed it had forgotten how to do. My name was on the front. Her handwriting. No return address. I stood there for a long time before I went inside. I am 95 years old and I am going to tell you something about pride that I have never told another living person. Not my children. Not my friends, the few that remain. Not the priest I have been seeing for 30 years who knows most of my inventory of failures and has been patient with all of them. Not this one. This one I kept because keeping it was the only punishment that felt proportionate to what I had done. Here is what I know, not from books, not from observation, not from the comfortable distance of someone else's mistake. From 60 years of living inside it, daily, the way you live inside a house that has one room you never open because you know what's in there and you are not ready, and then one day a letter arrives and the door opens whether you are ready or not. Pride is not the opposite of love. It is love's most efficient killer because it works from the inside, quietly, wearing the face of dignity, and by the time you understand what it has done, the damage is 60 years old and the woman whose handwriting you would recognize anywhere is still alive somewhere and you are 95 and the arithmetic of what remains is not generous. Her name was Anna. I let her go in 1963. She waited for me until 1971. I did not know that until a Tuesday morning in November when an envelope arrived with no return address and I stood at my front door and felt my heart remember something I had spent 6 decades trying to make it forget. Anna was not the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. I want to say that because the story of a man who lets a woman go and regrets it forever tends to arrange itself around beauty, around the idea that she was so extraordinary, so luminous, so unlike anyone else that losing her was obviously a tragedy. I don't want to tell that story. That story lets me off too easily. Anna was ordinary in the way that certain things are ordinary, the way good light is ordinary, the way the smell of coffee in the morning is ordinary. Present so consistently, so reliably, so without drama that you stop registering it as something that could be absent. You stop understanding that ordinary is not the same as replaceable. I did not understand that until she was gone. We met in 1958. I was 28. She was 26, introduced by a mutual friend at a dinner party in a small apartment on the 4th floor of a building on Madison Street that I could still find today. If someone drove me there, I could walk up those stairs in the dark and put my hand on the exact spot on the railing that was loose and always moved when you touched it. Memory is strange that way. It keeps the things you didn't know you were keeping. She was sitting by the window when I arrived. She was reading, not performing reading, not the kind of reading people do at parties to signal something about themselves. Actually reading, genuinely absorbed, with the book held close and her feet tucked underneath her in the chair in the specific way of a person who has forgotten where they are because the page is more present than the room. Someone called her name and she looked up. She looked directly at me, not because I was anything particular, but because I happened to be standing in the line of sight between her and the person who called her name. She said, "You're blocking the light." Not hello. Not nice to meet you. You're blocking the light. I moved. She went back to her book. I spent the rest of that evening trying to get her attention and largely failing, and went home more interested in a human being than I had been in years. We were together for 5 years. 1958 to 1963. I know she was the most honest person I have ever been close to, Not cruel honest. There is a difference that some people never locate, and Anna had located it completely. She said what she thought in the direct, unembellished way of someone who respected you enough not to manage you. Who believed that the truth, plainly delivered, was a form of love. I found that quality alternately magnificent and deeply uncomfortable. Mostly uncomfortable. Because the truth Anna delivered most consistently was about me. She saw me with a precision that no one before or since has matched, saw the ambition and the fear underneath it, saw the pride and the insecurity it was built on top of, saw the man I was performing and the man I actually was, and refused, quietly but completely, to pretend they were the same person. She said to me once, at dinner in 1961, I can see the tablecloth, red checked, candles in wine bottles. She said, you are more comfortable with buildings than with people. You know exactly what a building needs. People make you nervous because they don't follow the plans. I said something dismissive. She looked at me with the patience she had when she had decided to wait for me to catch up rather than leave me behind. She was right. She was almost always right. That was part of the problem. The 5 years were not unhappy, I want to be precise about that. There were years of genuine happiness, Sunday mornings, and long walks and conversations until 2 in the morning and the specific comfort of being truly known by someone, but there were also years of my pride doing what pride does quietly, in the background of a life eroding things. I did not ask for help easily. I did not say I need you with any ease at all. Those words sat in my chest for 5 years like something I intended to say tomorrow. Always tomorrow. Always when I was more certain, more established, more the man I was planning to become. Anna waited for tomorrow for 5 years. In 1963 she asked me directly, winter, her apartment, the radiator making its noise, her feet tucked underneath her as always. She asked where we were going. Not as an ultimatum. As a genuine question from a woman who had been patient for 5 years and was now, quietly, asking for an honest answer. I gave her a dishonest one. I told her I needed more time. I told her the career was at a critical point. What I actually meant was, I am terrified of how much I need you, and it is easier to keep you at the distance of more time than to admit that the distance is entirely my own construction. I did not say that. I said I needed more time. Anna looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded once, not in agreement, but in the way you nod when someone has finally confirmed something you had been trying not to know. She said, "All right, Thomas." 3 weeks later she stopped calling. I told myself she would come back. I told myself that for 8 years. The first year after Anna left I did not call it loss. I called it space. Clarity. The natural conclusion of something that had run its course, the language of a man who has decided that reframing a wound is the same as healing it. I went to work. I designed buildings. I dated 2 women in 1964 who were perfectly pleasant and whom I treated with the distracted courtesy of a man who is physically present and entirely elsewhere. Neither of them said anything that stayed with me past the evening. By 1965 I had constructed a version of events that was comfortable to live inside, the version where we had simply wanted different things, where the timing had been wrong, where it was mutual and reasonable and nobody's fault. That version was very clean. I lived in it for a long time. The first crack appeared in 1967. A mutual friend, Gerald Marsh, who had been at the dinner party in 1958, mentioned Anna's name at lunch. Casually. He said she had moved to Boston. I said, "Is she well?" Gerald looked at me with an expression I did not fully read at the time. He said, "She's Anna. You know how she is." I did know how she was. That was the problem. I went back to my office and sat at my desk and looked at the plans. I was working on a commercial building, clean lines, everything exactly where it was supposed to be, and felt something move through me that I identified as nostalgia and that I now understand was much simpler and more devastating. It was the recognition that the right person was in Boston and I had put her there. I picked up the phone. Put it down. Picked it up again. Put it down. Told myself I would call tomorrow. Tomorrow became 1968. Then 1969. Then the comfortable fiction that too much time had passed, that calling now would be strange, intrusive, the action of a man who didn't know how to let things go gracefully. I was very graceful about letting Anna go. It cost me everything and I did it with complete composure. In 1971 Gerald mentioned her again. She had come back from Boston. He said she had been seeing someone, that it had been serious, that it had ended. He looked at me across the table and said, "Thomas, why don't you call her?" Simple question. The simplest possible question. I said, and I have replayed this moment for 54 years with the specific self-disgust of a man who knows exactly where he went wrong. I said, "I think that ship has sailed, Gerald." I said it with a small smile. The smile of a man being rueful and adult about something. The smile of a man who has mistaken performing acceptance for actually feeling it. Gerald said, quietly, "I'm not sure it has." I didn't ask him what he meant. I was too proud to ask. I went back to my office and drew clean lines on paper and built the rest of my life on ground I had never tested. In 1989 I went to Boston for work. On the second evening, walking back to my hotel, I turned a corner on Newbury Street and stopped. Anna was 20 feet away, standing outside a bookshop. Of course she was outside a bookshop looking at the window display. Coat collar turned up against the cold. Her hair was different. She was 57 years old. I recognized her before she turned around. In the 2 seconds between recognizing her and her turning, I experienced something I can only describe as the complete, simultaneous understanding of every choice I had made since 1963, not one at a time, but all at once, the entire architecture of 26 years of decisions laid out with the clarity that only comes when the thing you have been building around is suddenly standing 20 feet away. She turned around. She saw me. She said, "Thomas." Just my name, the way she always said everything, without performance, without drama, directly. We had coffee. 1 hour. Two people who had once known each other completely, making careful conversation about the intervening decade's work, the city, the weather. The ordinary, heartbreaking talk of two people who have a great deal to say and have both decided not to say it. She did not mention Boston. I did not mention Gerald's lunch. We said goodbye outside the cafe. She looked at me with that particular patience, that willingness to wait for you to catch up. I did not catch up. I shook her hand. Her hand. After 26 years, I shook her hand like a man meeting a colleague and walked back to my hotel and sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the wall for a very long time. It was not too late. It was 1989 and she was alive and I was alive, and it was not too late at all. But I was still too proud to admit the distance between us was entirely my own construction. So I packed my bag the next morning and flew home and did not think about Anna for a very long time. I got very good at not thinking about her. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. I walked to the hallway slowly. I do most things slowly now. Picked it up, straightened, and stopped. Her handwriting. After 60 years I knew it immediately, the particular way she formed the T in Thomas, slightly taller than the other letters, with a clean horizontal stroke that never wavered. The careful, unhurried script of a woman who wrote the way she spoke. No return address. No readable postmark, smudged, or old, or both. I carried it to the kitchen table. I sat down. I looked at it. I am 95 years old. I have designed over 200 buildings. I have buried a wife. I have raised 3 children and watched them become people I respect. I have sat with difficulty in many forms and generally been capable of facing things directly. I could not open that envelope for 40 minutes. I made tea I didn't drink. I looked out at the garden, November, everything stripped back, the light thin and honest. Then I opened it. The letter was 3 pages. Her handwriting throughout. The date was at the bottom of the last page, written smaller than the rest, March 1971. 54 years ago. Gerald's lunch. I'm not sure it has. The call I never made because I was too proud to ask what he meant. She wrote about the 5 years not with bitterness. Anna was never bitter, it was not in her construction. She wrote about Sunday mornings and long walks and conversations until 2 in the morning. She wrote about the radiator in her apartment, the red check tablecloth in the restaurant on the corner, the dinner party on Madison Street where a man had stood in front of a window and blocked her light. She wrote, I knew from that first evening that you were someone I could love completely. Not easily, you were never easy, Thomas. But completely. Without reservation. The way I had not loved anyone before and have not loved anyone since. I put the letter down. Outside the garden was very still. I picked it up. She wrote about 1963. She wrote that she had known, sitting in that chair, that more time was not what I needed. That what I needed was simpler and more difficult than time. She wrote, what you needed was to say that you were frightened. That was all. 3 words, not I love you, though I would have welcomed those too. Just, I am frightened. That was the true thing. I could see it so clearly and I could not say it for you, and I waited 5 years for you to say it yourself and you never did. I am frightened. 3 words. Not the 3 words I had told myself I couldn't say. A different 3 words. Simpler ones. Truer ones. The ones that had been sitting in my chest in 1963 while I performed composure and talked about my career and asked for more time I didn't need. She wrote about Boston. About coming back in 1971. About the man she had been seeing briefly, honestly, without cruelty, and that it had ended because she had understood she was measuring him against something she should have stopped measuring things against. She wrote, I am writing this letter because Gerald told me you asked about me. Because I think that means something, Thomas, even if you don't know yet that it means something. I am writing it because I am 39 years old and I am tired of being patient in silence, and I would rather say this and have you not respond than carry it unsaid for the rest of my life. She had written it. She had not sent it. And I had smiled my composed smile and said that ship has sailed. The last lines were short. I don't know if you still think about me. I think about you. I think that you are someone who will spend a great deal of your life being almost brave. I hope I am wrong. I hope that one day you will be completely brave, not for me, it is probably too late for me, but for yourself. Because you deserve that. Even if you don't believe you do. Almost brave. She had seen it in 1971. In 1963. Probably in 1958 from a chair by a window before I had spoken a single word. I folded the letter carefully. Put it back in the envelope. Sat at the kitchen table with the cold tea and the bare garden and the thin November light, and thought about a man who had spent 60 years being almost brave. And I wept. Not gracefully. Not with composure. For the first time in 95 years I wept without managing it, without the careful containment that pride builds into the structure of how a man exists in his own body. The house was quiet. Nobody there to see it. It didn't matter, because it wasn't for anyone else. It was the first truly brave thing I had done in 60 years. It was also, at 95, possibly the last. There is a word I have been thinking about since that Tuesday morning. The word is almost. Almost brave. Almost said it. Almost called. Almost caught up on a Boston street in 1989 and said the true thing instead of shaking her hand and walking back to my hotel to sit on the edge of a bed and look at a wall. Almost is the most expensive word in the English language. It does not feel dangerous when you are using it. It feels responsible. Measured. The reasonable choice of a man waiting for the right moment for more certainty, more stability, more of whatever thing you have decided you need before you can afford to be completely honest about what you want. The right moment does not arrive. It never arrives. Because the right moment is not something that happens to you, it is something you make, deliberately, by deciding that the true thing is more important than the safe thing. By deciding that I am frightened said out loud in a room to the person you love is worth infinitely more than a lifetime of composed, graceful, almost. I did not make that moment. I waited for it for 60 years. It arrived in an envelope with no return address, 54 years old, too late in every way that matters. And it said exactly what I had always known it would say. That is the thing about the true thing. You already know it. You have always already known it. The question is never whether you know it. The question is whether you are willing to say it before the envelope arrives. Pride is not a wall. It is a window. You can see everything through it, the person on the other side, the life you could be living, the words you could be saying. With complete clarity. You just cannot reach through. Cannot close the distance between what you see and what you are willing to say. And the person on the other side can see you too. Anna saw me through that window for 60 years. So here is the only thing I want to leave you, not a lesson, not a rule, just one question: what is the true thing you have not said? Not the easy thing. Not the composed, graceful, almost brave thing. The true thing. The one sitting in your chest right now, waiting with the patience of something that knows it will outlast your pride because it always does. And more importantly, who is still alive to hear it. That is the arithmetic that matters at 95, not what you built. Not what you achieved. Not the buildings with your name on them or the career that seemed so critical in 1963. The arithmetic that matters is simpler and more ruthless: who is still here, and what have you not said to them? I had 60 years to say the true thing to Anna. I had a dinner party in 1958, 5 years together, a telephone in 1965, Gerald's lunch in 1971, a Boston street in 1989, and every ordinary day between thousands of days that were not ordinary at all, that were in fact the only days I had and the only chance I had, and I spent them being almost brave. She is still alive. Somewhere, 93 years old. I do not know where. I do not know if she is well. I do not know if she ever thinks about a man who stood in front of a window at a dinner party in 1958 and blocked her light. I know she thought about him in March of 1971. I know what she wrote. I know it took 54 years to reach him. The letter is on my desk. Not in the envelope. Not folded. Open, flat, all 3 pages, the way you leave something when you have decided it is done being hidden. Mrs. Hennessy, who comes on Tuesdays to help with the house, asked about it the following week. She is not given to unnecessary questions, but 3 pages of handwritten paper spread open on a desk is not invisible. She looked at it while she was dusting, then looked at me with the careful expression of a woman who has decided to ask something she is not sure she should ask. She said, "Is everything all right, Mr. Alderman?" I thought about that for a moment. Then I said, "No. But it is honest. Which is better?" She nodded slowly, in the way of someone who is not entirely sure they agree but respects the conviction. She dusted around the letter. She has dusted around it every Tuesday since. I have thought about writing back. Not to fix anything. I am 95 years old and I do not believe a letter can fix 60 years. Not to apologize, though the apology is there, fully formed, and will be there until I die. But simply to say, "I received your letter. I read it. I am sorry it took 54 years to arrive, and I am sorrier still that it took me 60 years to deserve to read it. You were right about everything in 1963, in 1971, on a street in Boston in 1989 when I shook your hand and walked away. You saw me more clearly than I ever allowed myself to be seen, and I called that uncomfortable, and I called it difficult, and I called it 100 things that were not its true name. Its true name was the best thing that ever happened to me. I was almost brave enough to know that. Almost. I have not written it yet. I am still deciding whether I will not from fear. Fear is a young man's luxury, and at 95 I have misplaced it, but because some part of me is still learning the difference between saying the true thing for yourself and saying it for the person you are saying it to. Anna has built a life. 60 years of a life, without me, in spite of me, and that life deserves to be undisturbed by a 95-year-old man finally arriving at a truth she wrote down in 1971 and knew long before that. She already knows. She has always already known. Perhaps the letter is enough. Perhaps someone sent it because it was time for me to know what she had known, not so I could do something with it, but so I could finally, in whatever time remains, stop living in the comfortable version and start living in the true one. Outside, the garden is still bare. November became December while I was sitting with the letter, and December has the particular honesty of a month that does not pretend cold, direct, stripped of everything unnecessary, the bones of things visible without the softening of leaves. I have always liked December for that. Anna would have too. She liked honest things, the way I liked clean lines in buildings for the clarity, for the way they showed you exactly what was there without apology or embellishment. She was the most honest person I have ever known, and I spent 60 years being almost brave enough to deserve that honesty. It sits with me at breakfast. It sits with me in the evenings when the house is quiet and the light goes early. It sits with me when Mrs. Hennessy dusts around it on Tuesdays. I blocked her light once. In 1958, at a dinner party on the 4th floor of a building on Madison Street, I stood between a woman and the window, and she looked up from her book and told me directly, without performance, without anything other than the plain honest truth of it, "You're blocking the light." I moved. I have spent 60 years moving in the wrong direction. The letter is on my desk. Her handwriting. Still the most honest thing in the room.